Hello and welcome to Strange Stories. It's great to have you here. We are all about sharing stories of near-death experiences from around the world in the hopes of bringing some light and inspiration to your day. Our daily videos offer a glimpse into what lies beyond this life, and we believe that they can help us all appreciate the gift of life a little bit more. If you enjoy our content, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell to stay up to date on all of our latest videos. Your support means the world to us and helps us continue to grow. And to our returning viewers, welcome back. We're thrilled to have you with us again. So go ahead, grab a cozy blanket, get comfy, and join us for today's incredible near-death experience story.
Before I go into detail about this event, I'd like to clarify a few points for the viewers. First and foremost, what I'm about to describe happened. By any stretch of the imagination, I'm not a liar. In fact, I despise lies. With that said, I can assure you that I'm not a fiction storyteller, so you're not wasting your time. Furthermore, I take pride in providing people with accurate and truthful information. This also includes resisting the urge to embellish in the face of strong emotions. Second, like so many others who've related their experiences here, I've been drastically changed by my experience, and it has been difficult to remain unemotional while relating the experience in question. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge that the nature of this experience is unusual. In fact, I've never come across anything like it while reading other stories, here or elsewhere. That being said, it is not what most people would consider a proper NDE, though I can't rule out the possibility that it was also life-threatening in comparison. Let's get started with my story. John Christopher is my name. When I was 23, I was living in Oklahoma City with my grandmother. At the time, I was a student and a part-time truck driver. I recall coming home from college one afternoon feeling very groggy. I went upstairs to my room and lay down. As I waited to fall asleep, there was little to no delay. I do remember falling asleep eventually. That is the crux of my issue. I occasionally experience sleep paralysis. I'm not a fan of sleep paralysis. While I've read that some people enjoy lucid dreaming, a type of REM sleep, I can't stand not being in control of my body when I realize I'm not. When I realize I'm sleeping, I must always wake up due to intense anxiety. I want to be clear that I don't experience anxiety symptoms while suffering from sleep paralysis for any other reason than not being in control. That is, there's no fear of demons, fairies, or Loch Ness. On this particular occasion, after being struck by sleep paralysis, I managed to awaken after the typical 15 to 20 seconds. Despite the fact that the event is terrifying, I simply decide to relax and succumb to exhaustion. I was paralyzed again in an astonishingly short period of time. So after another 15 to 20 seconds, I struggled to reawaken. This cycle of falling asleep and re-emerging from sleep paralysis occurred 4 times in total. After the third occurrence, I had grown tired of these occurrences to the point where I felt I needed a solution. I needed to think of something because my stress was at an all-time high and I was frustrated. The sleep paralysis itself was too mentally taxing, and I was determined to find out if there was a better way to speed up my awakenings after episodes of sleep paralysis. Then it struck me. I decided that I needed to change the way I tried to wake up. That is, I must shift from a stymied, gradual struggle to awaken to a concerted, welled-up torrent of effort in order to do so immediately. If I did it correctly, it would be a one-time emergence. With this simple technique in mind, I relaxed and went back to sleep, and I was consciously asleep in no time. I couldn't believe how quickly these events kept repeating themselves. I was disappointed, but I was as prepared as I could be. I started thinking about what I needed to do almost immediately. Anger over my unrelenting situation welled up inside of me. It kept my anxiety in check as my plan to focus on my fear went ahead despite it. Many long seconds went by. I imagined myself becoming more powerful in order to succeed in an endeavor that my cynical mind predicted would fail. But I knew I had to give it a shot. Oh, but if it worked. I imagined that if one person experienced a sudden awakening, others would follow. While paralyzed, I would eliminate some of my fear of falling asleep and a great deal of terror. If it was the answer I needed, I was going to focus on it with such intensity that I would have leapt not only out of my sleep, but also possibly out of my bed. If I had anything to say about it, I was going to be the master of my situation. It was finally time to turn a long-awaited leaf. Finally, I felt like the time had come. I was determined. I began counting down from 5. I lunged with everything I had when I reached 0. Instead of regaining control or simply not regaining control, reality checked its bags and greeted me with something electrical. My eyes popped open, my ears were racked by what sounded like an explosion, followed by a constant tone. As what appeared to be electricity coursed through me, I could practically feel my muscles spasm. I knew I was awake because I could clearly see my ceiling, but when I tried to move, I quickly realized I couldn't move a muscle as I stared upwards. Everything I heard seemed to die away. Something began to form in front of my face in a matter of seconds. I locked my gaze on the ground. What on earth is going on? It was there for me to see, plain as day, within a few moments. It was just a box. I was struck by both relief and disbelief. It appeared to be about a foot away from my face. I was perplexed as to how this could be happening. I knew I could see, and there was no way this could be a dream, hallucination, or disillusionment. But how is this possible? I realized it was surrounded by something a few moments later. Clear, fluid, forceful speech rolled through my ears before I could discern anything else. Terror struck me like a trillion tons of bricks. I couldn't move my body, but I also couldn't move my eyes. I had to take a look at it, despite the fact that I had no desire to learn anything else. I yanked with everything I could muster. I yanked, and yanked. There was not even a twitch of the eye. Although I had my senses, it appeared that my body was completely disabled and disconnected from my desire. As my inability to change the situation persisted, so did my speech. As I stared, whatever was delivering the speech droned on. Obviously, I did not hear anything remotely resembling English. It didn't sound like any other familiar speech I'd ever heard. It didn't even sound like a man was saying it. It sounded cold and distant, yet commanding. There were no spaces between the syllables. The speech was direct, loud, and moving. It was undeniably genuine. You can tell when something is genuine when you see, hear, and feel it. This was it, I thought. I wasn't going to get out of this one alive. I was all but dead. My grandmother would arrive later that evening. She'd always knock on my door and ask where I'd been all day. She'd find me in bed and wonder why I wasn't responding. As I gave in, the thought revolted me. There was no other option. As I began to surrender to my apparent fate, which I felt was undeserved, I became more aware of what I was looking at. Obviously, there was something surrounding the cube. It was so captivating because it radiated pure white light. Folks, I'm not sure what I saw in general, but I can tell you unequivocally that this object was a halo from start to finish. The white light was soothing to the eyes while also being all-encompassing. As I stared at it, it occurred to me that I had no idea what a halo was supposed to be. As I became preoccupied with it, I found myself feeling relieved. I returned my attention to the cube a few moments later. As I scanned it, whoever was responsible for the speech droned on. The thing appeared to be dark and translucent. There was some writing or something on the surface here and there. It appeared to be writing, but in small, confined spaces. The writing appeared as individual glyphs, but I didn't have nearly enough time to absorb it. The speech came to a halt before I could make any conclusions about the writing. When the speech ended, I felt my fear return in full force. My attention fled from the nuances that I could discern, and I returned to my deer in the headlights, don't run me over act. In a morbid way, I felt as if my last rites had been read to something, or to myself, and that this was the end. Why bother saying something that no one can understand? Was it, in fact, speaking to me? I was terrified to see what would happen next, but nothing happened while I waited. For a few seconds, everything remained motionless. The vision then faded into nothingness. After the box vanished, I struggled once more. As I yanked for my freedom again, I felt a renewed sense of possibility. Then I observed my eyes being literally closed for me. This was yet another bizarre event to add to the list. I was back in the darkness in no time as a result of a typical sleep paralysis experience. Even though I normally despised the typical sleep paralysis scenario, I had forgotten to feel that way. A conventional sleep paralysis experience was something that I always escaped from, no matter what, and that I did. Something strange happened to me as I emerged from the event. It took some time for me to regain full control of my body. In fact, before I awoke, I was planning on leaping out of bed, crashing through my door, and sprinting down the stairs to the first sanctuary that seemed adequate. But as my eyes gradually opened, I noticed that the rest of my body was lacking in an unusual way. I started with my head, then my neck, my chest, my abdomen, and so on. I gradually regained control from my head to my toes. I was once again astounded. My body was not available to me at the same time. I wondered what could cause that to happen now. It took a few seconds as I yanked on muscles that weren't paying attention. It all left me completely perplexed. After I was given everything back, I decided that fleeing the scene was pointless. I knew I was back in command. As I sat on my bed, contemplating confirmation of a higher power, there was a fairly loud ringing in one of my ears. This event has clearly altered my core beliefs about life, in my opinion. The incident demonstrated to me that I'm not entirely in control of my life and that it is most likely an illusion. I had no idea what else I would eventually learn about the event at the time it occurred, but I was skeptical that anything could be learned. Many years have passed, and I've discovered things that are surprisingly helpful in explaining things.